Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our first webinar today. We're so excited to have you here. My name is Caroline Allen. I'm the Vice President of the Yass Prize. We just launched this application, and so this is our first webinar. So again, we are so thankful for those who are joining live. And for those who are not able to join live, we will be sending you this recording following the webinar. We have a lot to get through today. Again, appreciate your time and taking time out of your workday to be with us. I'll be taking some questions at the end, so please feel free to keep those questions. Don't write them in the chat just yet, but we'll take them at the end. I have some wonderful alumni and presenters here, which we'll get to. So again, so grateful for your time. Today's webinar is all about tell me more about the Yass Prize. It's our first one. It's introductory. Just to give you a broad spectrum of why the Yass Prize exists, where it's come, and today is a special opportunity to learn from our 3 past award winners. So we're so excited to have that opportunity today. Let's jump in. So today we're going to talk about the founding of the Yass Prize, why it got started 4 years ago at this time. We're going to talk about the STOP principles, which are really important, an essential part of the application. And then we're going to talk about the application timeline. We will then, I'll be interviewing our 3 $1 million award winners from 2021, 2022, and 2023. And then we'll take some question and answer from the audience, whether you have questions directed to me or our alumni winners. So that's a little bit, and we'll be ending today at 11:45 Eastern time to make sure that we preserve all of your time wisely. Okay, let's jump in. So the Yass Prize, or actually it was originally called the Stop Awards, but it was founded in 2021 by our generous benefactors, Jeff and Janine Yass. And they noticed during COVID, where this was again the thick of COVID, and they noticed that so many of our heroes, whether it's nursing or doctors, those frontline workers, were getting honored and celebrated due to their heroic efforts during COVID. And they thought to themselves, well, there's also another type of frontline worker, and that's our teachers and our education leaders who are keeping schools open, who are doing right by kids, using this opportunity to transform learning and ensure that students still have excellent education outcomes, even during a pandemic. And so the first initial STOP award was originally created to, honor and advance those education providers who were not only performing during COVID, but outperforming in a time when so many schools were closed. And we all know that virtual learning, while it might have seemed necessary in the moment, unfortunately has led to a lot of gaps and decreased outcomes for students. Because of that success during that first year, this became an annual prize, and we're now in our 4th year of the Yass Prize, where each year we recognize, celebrate, and reward a handful of education providers throughout the United States who are providing an education that is sustainable, transformational, outstanding, and permissionless. And we'll go through that acronym and how we're defining each of those principles in a short minute. A lot of people write to our team related to eligibility. And we all know that applications and grants take time. And we want to make 2 things really clear. This is not a traditional grant. So we're not the US Department of Education who's going to, require you to fill out a really long document and then follow up with lots of reports and, tracking. We want to be the antithesis of that, because we all know that you have much better ways to use your time. So it is an award to celebrate the work that you've done and to say this is a model for what education should look like and feel like around the United States, rather than a traditional grant. And so that lens might help you as you're thinking through the writing of your application. Yes, we are going to ask questions about what would you do if you received future funding, and that funding piece is important, but the award is so much more than that funding piece. This is our eligibility criteria, which is on the first page of the application. And it will ask you yes or no questions pertaining to these 5 bullet points. If you're able to answer yes to all 5 of these questions, you in fact are eligible to apply for the Yass Prize. Now, I know it's not as easy as that because you might say, well, I'm eligible, but like, should I be using my time towards this? And we can't really answer that for you. These are the basic minimum foundational components of what makes someone eligible or not. And knowing that the application takes between 4 to 6 hours to complete, it's really up to you. And we really hope that you use office hours and webinars like this to really make a decision as to whether this is a good use of your time. And I know after hearing from Anthony and Diana and Rob, hopefully you'll be excited to apply, knowing that it's not going to take weeks and weeks and weeks of deliberation and writing to get this to the finish line. Although you all are in a really good place because the application is not due till April 18th. So you still have quite a bit of time. But again, we don't want people taking months or weeks even to submit their application. So overall, we're looking for organizations that currently exist serving students in pre-K to 12. There are some organizations that dip into the working with students who are getting their GED that might be a little bit older, that like 18 to 21 range, but we don't fund organizations that are higher ed or solely higher ed. You need to be currently working with, serving, or educating students, meaning that you can't be a pilot program or a charter school or another school that's opening in August. Your work needs to be established in headquarters in either the US or Puerto Rico. Your work needs to be primarily conducted in this nation. We know that some organizations have a global reach, and that's incredible, but we are focused on improving the education outcomes for students in the United States. And if you do work outside, just make sure your application is tailored on what you're currently doing in the 50 states, or one state in particular, whatever applies to you. And then hopefully none of our awardees are on here besides Diana, Anthony, and Rob, but anyone who's been previously given funding from our organization and has been deemed a quarterfinalist or a semifinalist or a Yass Award for Education Freedom recipient, you are not allowed to reapply for this new prize. So we're looking for a new crop, a new crew to recognize and reward. So when we get to the question and answer section, I'm not going to be answering questions related to eligibility. We try to make it so crystal clear. And then ultimately, whether you're going to then continue the application and move forward, that's a personal decision, but we can't unfortunately make that decision for you. So I'm now going to dive into the 4 stop principles. And the reason we do this in this first webinar is because this is the part of your application that judges will spend a significant amount of time looking at. How are you sustainable? How are you thinking about your transformation, and how you're providing a transformational education for students? What are your outstanding outcomes? And how are you proving that you're permissionless, no matter what type of sector you are in? We do have all of these definitions on our website. And so we encourage you to look there if you're confused or have questions. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that here. So when we think about sustainability, it's meaning that a provider is able to exist without continual philanthropy, utilizing public dollars that fund entities where students are learning. And we've talked about where the funding follows the child. Now, this looks totally different based on your sector. If you're a traditional public school, you get, local, state, and federal funding. If you're a charter school, you get charter dollars. If you're an independent school, you might be getting tuition, or you might be in an ESA state. If you're an ed tech provider, how do you have a revenue source that's sustaining your organization so that you're not having to, continually rely on philanthropy? Ultimately, at the end of the day, what we're looking for here is that you are pushing the needle forward and you're thinking about sustainability at the forefront of your mission. Again, meaning that you are not 100% relied on donor contributions or grants, because we know that donors come in and out and it takes a lot of time to build this. So if you are not 100% sustainable, where most organizations that apply are not, that's totally fine. It's how are you pushing the needle, whether it's through advocacy, whether it's through legislative policy pushes, whether it's through innovative revenue streams to push towards sustainability. One example I'll give here is Verde Eco School in Florida. They are a private school, and they do host have an Airbnb on the side, as well as a community garden and lots of different alternative revenue streams. So while they are in Florida, so they do allow for the ESA, and they do get tuition from some families. They also have these other alternative revenue streams that are helping to supplement their model. Another example is Crystal Ray Network, who we funded last year as a finalist. All of their students participate in a corporate work study program. And that corporate work study program that is paid for by the corporations or the businesses helps supplement the tuition for the students, because the students are normally not able to afford the tuition or like the per pupil tuition cost. So it doesn't have to look one way, and it shouldn't look one way, but all of those two organizations that I just talked about are really thinking through, yes, they do still have a grant component or some donor base, but it's not the crux or their like entire financial model. Next up, we have transformational, and transformational is really thinking about the new approaches, the new tools, the new technologies that allow us to better serve students in highly responsive ways. We know, like growing up, there was a lot of textbooks, there was a lot of lecture, there was a lot of really poor, teaching models that did not allow for high student engagement or choice and voice. And so again, you can think about transformation in so many different ways. And I'm sure all three of our presenters coming up will, have different ways that they define this, but ultimately we're not teaching students in the same ways that we taught students 10 years ago, or God forbid, 30 years ago, but we're thinking about new innovative ways. And one of my colleagues, Cassie, put this well the other day of like, you might do 10 different things, right? Or you might have 10 different ways that you're transforming the education learning environment for your kids, but how can you focus on like one or two aspects in your application that really set you apart? So try to think about, if you're going to say, oh, we do social emotional learning really, really well. Well, so do a lot of other schools. But how can you make sure you're telling that story in a way that is really compelling, that allows the reader or the judge to really understand what you're doing, and sets you apart from all of the other schools who are placing an emphasis on mental health and social emotional well-being? So again, there's not one way to think about transformation, but it's really thinking about the bread and butter of your organization and what sets you apart or what makes you unique, and why you should be celebrated. Then we have outstanding. Outstanding, again, looks different for every organization. You're going to hear me say that a bunch of different times, but if you're a 2-year-old organization versus a 30-year, charter school, you're going to have different metrics. If you're an ed tech provider, you're going to have different metrics than if you are a school that takes state testing. So we don't just look at state test scores. We don't just look at graduation rates. We look at whatever outcomes that you use to determine two things: whether your education or the way that you're teaching kids is working, and that is promoting or leading to more demand. So because we're doing so well, and because our students are thriving, not just surviving, we know that we have a line out the door where so many more families are interested in what we're doing. So the more specific you can be, the better in this answer in your application, but we are not just looking for qualitative data or quantitative data. You have to really think through how would you, if someone came up to you and said, how do you know your school's working? What would you tell them? The answers that are the least compelling for outstanding are the ones that are just super vague, where it's not really clear how they're defining their success. There's like no metrics given, and it's a lot of fluff. So please make sure you're being really specific, although we're not going to be prescriptive about how we define education success for students. And last but not least, we have permissionless. Permissionless is, making sure that education systems and learning environments are free to exist and thrive without depending on regulatory bodies. I had the opportunity to visit Black Pastors United for Education yesterday in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, one of our finalists from last year. And they are permissionless because they realize that their church building is empty for most of the day, Monday through Friday. And instead of having an empty vacant building, they are taking students in who need another learning opportunity, another place of learning. And the students are enrolled in a cyber charter school, but with the help of these love warriors from the church community, they are guided and mentored to complete their classes, get support in these small group settings. And Pastor Josh, who leads this wonderful learning center, didn't have to ask. I mean, he might have needed his board's permission from the church, but they were so behind what he was doing that it didn't pause or slow down their progress. And because this model is so exciting, yesterday we visited with at least 10 other Black pastors from Pennsylvania and beyond who want to adopt a similar model for their church community and for their city. And so it was really exciting to see that he's built this. Right now it houses like 30 to 40 students, so it's not big compared to other schools, but he's providing that opportunity for students and then also creating a model that is sustainable for other Black pastors who are excited to utilize their church building in a different way. So I hope some of those examples paint a picture. We obviously don't want you to try to be like any of our other awardees. And actually, if you are different than one of our past awardees, that's even more exciting for us because we're just trying to find hidden gems throughout the whole United States who are just thinking about learning in a different way. As for some tangible and tactical information and knowledge, here are some key application dates for this year. As you know, we are right now in the middle of our application window being open, and the application closes on April 18th. Please know that we are not making any exceptions to that deadline. You still have plenty of time, so you all are way ahead of the game. But we have not in the past 2 or 3 years given any extensions. So it's due at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, right in the middle of the day on the 18th. And unfortunately, do not wait with technology. Sometimes we get emails of like, oh, I tried to submit and then it wasn't working. And unfortunately, those applications just didn't move forward or get accepted last year. Then we'll be announcing our 50 semifinalists in early September 24. Then on September 12th, we have our second annual Yass Summit in New York City. All of our semifinalists will come to that. So we're going to be turning around in about a week's time, flights and all of that. So please make sure that that date is on your calendars. That therefore, if you become an awardee of ours, you have that date locked in. We have our accelerator in October. We're going to have a whole separate webinar on the accelerator talking about the 3 weeks of virtual programming and the 1 week of Miami programming. And that's really an opportunity for our awardees to learn from the best and the brightest and from each other on how to continue to push the needle and think about where their organization or business is headed. And then this year we're ending in November, not December. And so our finalists and our $1 million Yass Prize winner will be announced in November. And then if one of you is our winner and is in this room, you will be added to this elite crew who I'll be introducing very soon because right now we have 3 winners and we will soon have a 4th winner by the end of this year. So it is my honor and privilege now to introduce let them introduce our 3 past winners. I will say though that, these are 3 individual leaders that really stood out from the rest. That's why they were chosen as the $1 million Yass Prize winner. Although it's really hard decision every year. And that's why we have so many more awardees besides just the $1 million winner. So this year we'll have 49 other awardees, other semifinalists, and then the $1 million winner, because we know that there's just not one person each year that's defying the odds and proving greatness in education. But they are here with us today, and I'm excited to have them introduce themselves and answer some questions. So here we go. Rob, thank you so much for being here. I'm going to start with you. You are our first $1 million winner. Can you just introduce yourself, who you are, where you're from, and what you do?
Hi. Obviously, you got the introduction about in 2021. I was the CEO at Discovery Center of Springfield, where we were chosen as the grand prize winner. Now I am the COO for the Yass Prize and the Center for Education Reform. So I'm actually on the team now.
We brought him over, knowing that the Discovery Center is in very good hands. But it was so exciting to be able to have him on our team and to leverage and learn from his experience being an alum. Rob, excited for you to be here. We're going to head over next. Our second $1 million winner from 2022 was Diana Diaz Harrison. Diana, why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us who you are, where you're from, and what you do.
Yeah, so Diana Diaz Harrison, I'm founder and executive director at Arizona Autism Charter Schools. And we are approaching 10 years of service in the community, or the state of Arizona, rather. We have opened 5 schools in 10 years. So we've been a little busy over here. We didn't have 5 schools when I won the Yass Prize. We had 4, and then the Yass Prize in 2022 helped us open our new campus in Tucson, Arizona. And thanks to the Yass Prize, I'm also the founder of the National Accelerator of Autism Charter Schools. And that entity's mission is to support other founding teams in other states who are looking to open autism-focused charter schools. And we have 3 teams in the works in Louisiana, Nevada, and Florida, and other more challenging states. But our goal is to have an autism-focused charter in every major city in America. And we're on our way thanks to the Yass Prize.
That scaling and growth is incredible. And as you can see already from Rob's introduction and Diana, 2 very different, organizations that they're leading. One being, a museum turned a school, and one being a charter school that was like a smaller network that now has a bigger vision and mission to grow based on the demand, the need that families and students have for students with autism. So awesome. We're going to go over last to Anthony Brock. Our team just had the opportunity to visit Valiant Cross Academy a couple of weeks ago, and we encourage you to read on our website about that visit and look at the pictures. Anthony, tell us who you are, what you do, and where you're from.
Sure. Hello, Caroline and everyone. My name is Anthony Brock. Do I have feedback? Is that good?
Nope, you're good. I'm going to mute myself just to make sure I don't have any feedback.
Okay. So I'm Anthony Brock. I'm born and raised in Montgomery, Alabama, and we pride ourselves here for being the birthplace of the civil rights movement. I'm the founder or co-founder, along with my brother Fred, of Valiant Cross Academy in Montgomery, Alabama. We're an all-male school, 6th through 12th grade. We started with just 30 young men, and now we have 210 amazing African-American males. The uniqueness of our school is that we're right across the street from Dr. Martin Luther King's church, and we're right up the street from the stop where Rosa Parks got on the bus and stepped into history. But again, we're just honored to be winners this year. I have not stopped smiling yet. The Yass Prize has awarded me the opportunity, not just for the $1 million, but I've traveled to places that I've never been to. Looking forward to this year traveling to DC and meeting some more amazing people. I've learned so much from the past winners and just being a part of this award. So thank you guys for having me today.
Wonderful. So I'm going to have Cassie spotlight Rob, Diana, and Anthony all at once. And we're now going to just dive into a conversation. There are over 90 people on this webinar right now who are interested in applying. Some might have already be well into their application. So what better way to learn from the 3 of you in that Anthony was in their shoes a year ago. Diana years and Rob, I don't even know what that application, I don't even remember what it looked like. It was so different. But let's first start with Diana. What is one misconception that you think a lot of potential applicants have about the Yass Prize, specifically related to the application process or the application?
Well, it's definitely not like a government grant like you explained. It flows really easily. The portal gets better and better each year in terms of just being user friendly. The prompting questions are very easy to answer. I don't think I spent more than 3 90-minute sittings to finish it. It was all information that school leaders and other education professionals should have on hand. So it's really more about pouring your heart out in those words and those narratives to say, you know, what is your secret sauce? Why do you love the population that you serve? Why are you the right person to do that work? You know, how do you build the team? So yes, definitely, it's important to have your data and your metrics, especially for the outstanding portion of the questions. It's also important to think about, you know, what you're doing now and writing about that, but also how you want to scale what you're doing now. Because if you're doing amazing work that's changing lives, then it shouldn't stay where it's at right now. It should expand. And, you know, I believe the Yass Prize really values leaders who have a vision that is above and beyond, you know, one single school or one project. So, you know, really being intentional about, to me, my advice would be, if you are the lead applicant, write it yourself. You know, don't delegate this. This is too important.
Awesome. Anthony or Rob.
Coming through.
Awesome. Thank you, Diana. Anthony or Rob, do you have anything to add to what Diana's saying, just about like misconceptions?
Yes, I would like to add to what Diana just said about writing it yourself. So this is actually the first grant I have ever written personally. We have a grant writer here. And so I dove in because I'm saying, who knows the story and the vision and the mission of Valiant Cross better than I do? And in that process, you know, I got to learn a lot about our organization, and you realize that you are doing a lot of great things and that you are capable and that your organization is worthy. Sometimes you'll think that, you know, why our school out of all the other schools? But as you get to talking about it, I think it was a very rewarding process to go through writing. So I agree, Diana.
Yep, I was also heavily involved in the writing process of mine as well. So the biggest misconception, I think, and this is probably going to be shocking to a lot of the applicants that are on here, is that it's not about the money. It's all about the money right now, right? Like, people saw that this prize is $1 million, and and then the $200,000, all the resources that you're going to get. But that's the key word. Resources aren't always money. And the resources that the Yass Prize provides you and invites you to take part in are way more than $1 million for every single person that makes that top 50.
And Rob, can you tell us a little bit more about this difference between the award and a grant? And I made that clear, but it might be a little confusing for some people. How do we see the Yass Prize as more of an award rather than like a traditional grant that a lot of people might be used to, you know, filling out applications for?
Yeah, so I think a grant is something that every applicant on here probably has a lot of experience with. You know, you apply for it to do the X. Like, this is the thing that you're applying for it. If you get this, then this is what you're going to do with the money. Whereas this is an award. And so it's not necessarily all about what you're going to do with the funding. It's what you have done, what you're capable of doing. It's not something in the future tense as much as it is where you are presently. That's why, you know, you have to be an actual organization. I think that's a key difference. You know, you said like one of the requirements for applying for this is you can't be like, this is this great idea I have. Grants, you can apply for a grant with a great idea you have. In fact, most grants are conceptual programs that you're like, hey, if only I had funding, I could do this. Whereas this is an award for what you're already capable of doing.
And I think to that, you know, if you are so successful, like Diana said, and if you are so in demand in your community or beyond your community, beyond your state, you know, it's then obvious what the future impact would be, or where you can take that money and the network of, you know, thought leaders and experiences with you, knowing, Rob, what you said of it's just beyond the funding. It's also about being a part of the network and the community. And we're gonna have a whole future webinar on that in the future. But Anthony, let me go back to you. What was the most challenging of the STOP principles to reflect on and write about or understand? And what was the most interesting one for you, knowing, you know, sustainable, transformational, outstanding, and permissionless?
Yes, I think the sustainability piece was probably the most, not difficult, but the most reflective piece, because we had to think through, as a private school, we get our funding through the Alabama Accountability Act, which is a scholarship And we also have a very small amount of our parents that pay tuition. So that was the hardest part, but it is a sustainability piece right there that we did have that we got to focus on and got to highlight a little bit more. Since then, we've talked about, because of the sustainability piece, we are actually going more in depth about what that will look like. And we are actually going to be creating a center for urban education here where people can pay and students can pay. And we're going to partner with a couple of universities to pay to come and have their students educated and to do an intensive on the civil rights movement. But as far as the permissionless part, that's where we really found our sweet spot. We've created an African-American male museum that takes you all the way back to ancient civilization to where we are now and some of the problems that plague the Montgomery community. And so we are about as permissionless as you can be. If anybody walks through our school, you'll see that we celebrate the culture of our young men. I think it's very unique because we pride ourselves here on celebrating them and not just tolerating them. And that's what kind of sets us apart.
Diana, what was the most challenging or thought-provoking principle, and what was the most interesting or easy to write about?
I think the easiest was permissionless, because, ever since we first started, it was interesting for our state authorizer. They had never approved a school for that was focused on a particular special need. And, I said, other states are doing it, it's about time. And it's not about restricting kids to be with a certain group. It's more about celebrating neurodiversity and, playing to the strengths in their educational setting and not isolating kids. So, all along we've had to be permissionless, and I was able to tell that story in the grant application and throughout my opportunities in the accelerator. I know we're outstanding, but we do have a special population. So it was really important for me to get those data metrics that we use front and center to really tell the story of the growth that we have with kids, which is, really transformational to have a kid that is nonverbal, that has behavioral issues, to attending class and participating and demonstrating mastery through project-based learning is really a magical experience that kids have at our school, and we have the data to back that up. So I think just being very thoughtful and intentional about what is each STOP principle and how do you implement that in your setting is a fun experience. I really enjoyed telling our story through that lens.
And that's a great example, Diana, about that growth piece, right? They, students on IEPs or who have different learning, have goals that they're working towards, and that growth piece is so important, as well as we hear so much about with students with disabilities, that piece of going from K to 12 to, vocation or workforce development, right? And so it doesn't have to be all reflective on grades or attendance or graduation. Sometimes like workforce employment or getting students into the workforce and understanding, and those softer skills are just as valuable, especially if it's so directly connected to the needs of your population. Rob, what about you? Most challenging and most interesting STOP principle?
Yeah, so I've never really struggled, not never, but I don't struggle with telling a story. So that's how we viewed the application, was telling our story. And so to me, I believed all of those things, that we were STOP, we were sustainable, transformational, outstanding, and permissionless. And much like my other co-winners here, we viewed ourselves very much permissionlessly, and that was actually probably my favorite category, because I was like, finally somebody cares about permissionless, and it's a word now too, so that's great. Like the whole thing spoke to me in a really unique way. I think that it really resonated. I think looking at it now, I can see why some people might struggle with each one of those letters in telling their story. I think it's important for you. You've already talked about transformative, right? The T. That is, it has to be actually something that's not being done. It's not average Yes, outstanding. You define yourself. Why are you outstanding? It's outstanding the fact that Diana's school exists, right? Like that they're serving that population. It's maybe not about the test scores. So test scores, and maybe that is what makes you outstanding. I don't know. It's up to you. Like I said, it's your story. The sustainability piece, I think I would struggle more with writing that now than I did back then, because back then there was COVID funding for what we did, and so much of our story was related to COVID funding and our COVID response. So, sustainability, I think, to be fair, would be a harder story for me to tell now than it was back then. But yeah, definitely loved the permissionless piece.
But let's talk about that a little bit because, right, Missouri is not like Arizona or Florida or maybe even Alabama. So what, if you were to be applying this year, what lens might you take knowing that your students don't, are going to a private school, there's tuition, but don't have access to an ESA? You're still eligible, but how might you think about that question?
Well, so the good news is that before I left, we did get accredited. So we did get access to the ESEA funding that Missouri has now, which doesn't cover the full tuition. It's I think like 85% of the tuition that it would cover. So that I would definitely focus on that we are pursuing every available funding source to help these families. And then I would focus on the fact that, we're not accepting, going back to that permissionless piece, we don't accept that they're not fully funding these students who are getting for the first time ever in their educational careers exactly what they need. That's how I would approach that. And here's the steps we're taking to make sure that we're fixing that injustice in our state and for our students. So I think that's also a key piece of sustainability, is your willingness to fight for those students to get what they need.
And when we visited the Discovery Center last year, we just visited Anthony's school, and we're soon to be visiting Diana's school in April. When we visited those schools, that sustainability piece did come up when we were talking to legislators. Or Anthony, you had Governor Ivey there, and it was a big part of pushing the political and legislative agenda. So it wasn't just like, here's this amazing school, let's just keep pushing the needle here, but it's showing off this model, showing off the success and the demand, and making sure that whether it's politicians or press or other people hear about it, know about it, write about it, and then use that as they're thinking about policies, so that push piece that Rob is talking about, that advocacy piece is really important, and something that not just connects to our work that we're doing with finalists and our winners, but stuff that we do all along related to our accelerator. So in the last 2 minutes, I'm going to do a quick whip around. Before I ask the final question of our panelists, I know that my colleague Cassie has been answering some questions in the chat, in the Q&A portion. So you'll see there's two different Zoom features. There's the chat and the Q&A. If you want to look at other people's questions and how our team has answered them, you can look in the answered section. 9 have been answered. And then there's some that are open. So please, when I go to questions and answers in the next 2 minutes, I'm going to be looking at the Q&A piece. So please, at this time, start putting your questions in that might have not been answered in this webinar. So my final question, I'm going to give you each like 20 seconds to answer. What would be your advice to someone, and it could be you can take this any way you want, related to the application process for the Yass Prize? Let's start with our most, I don't want to say oldest, our first winner. We'll start with Rob, and then we'll go to Diana, and then we'll go to Anthony. Rob, you go for it.
Great. This one's easy. We almost didn't apply. We barely got it in on time. And really, I didn't think that we could win $1 million award. And we did. And if I had just made the other decision, I wouldn't be here today. So don't be like me, almost wasn't.
Diana, you're up next.
I would say start now. Start writing your story, and take your time. You're at a moment right now where you can really take your time with the application and actually enjoy the process. I'm going to share that I did apply the first year and kind of was very last minute, and that kind of sabotaged my opportunity in the first year, but I guess it just wasn't my time. I was meant to be the 2022 winner. But when I did apply in 2022, I started my process early, gathering all my data, all my testimonials, and then it was a much less stressful process when I built in time in my calendar to work on it early on.
And
Anthony,
I
you're-
would say, okay, I'm going to start by saying this. 1 in 3 African-American males will spend some time being incarcerated. 54% in grades K-12 right now will graduate on time. That's a problem, and we try to be the answer and be a solution. So focus on what problem it is that you're solving, identify that, and highlight that all throughout your application. That's what we try to do. That's what we know that we do well, and that's what we're confident that we do well in. And you guys can focus on whatever it is that makes you unique. And with me, it's working with African-American males, trying to get them across the line to and through college or whatever it is they plan to do in the future.
Wonderful. Well, thank you three so much. I'm going to go to some question and answers, but I'm definitely I already have one question that I know I'm going to ping back to Anthony. So feel free to put yourselves on mute real quick. I'm going to answer some, and then I'll definitely come to the three of you before we close out. So Kanisha asks, are the panelists open to chatting with those of us interested in applying? Unfortunately, these are, or not fortunately, these are three leaders who are doing the phenomenal hard work, opening up schools literally as we speak. And so to preserve their time, we're not able to connect you with our awardees. However, every single webinar will have two or three other alumni. And so we really encourage you to register for all of our future webinars. Cassie will put the information on our website so you always know when the next webinar is coming up, so that you can learn from and interact with our alumni, even if we're not able to put you in direct touch with them. But if you are a part of our community and you do become an awardee, you will be like so intricately connected and learning from them in Miami and other, like the platform that Diana mentioned. So again, encourage you to apply. Kai asked, would we be eligible? Again, I'm not really going to be answering a lot of eligibility questions. If you can say yes to those 5 questions, then you are eligible. If you're working with students in the United States, pre-K to 12, if you have questions beyond that, we're happy to answer them at info@yassprize.org if you have like a really specific question related to your organization. Anthony, this is the one I wanted to ping to you. So someone asked, can we put forward 2 leaders? We have a founder and a CEO who are both with us from the beginning. Anthony, I know you and your brother co-founded your school. You were the lead applicant, but your brother came to the accelerator. What was your thought process in terms of that, knowing that there's also not one right or wrong answer?
Sure. I'm actually the educator. Fred played professional football and he was into project management, and he was an athletic director, but I was a public school educator since 1999, like 13 years before we founded the school. And so I knew I could speak more to the educational part that we are providing here. And so that's why I took the lead on it.
But we do have the opportunity. So everyone needs to choose one lead applicant, and then there's a co-applicant. So you can, choose how you want to do that. Ultimately, if you just have one lead applicant, that doesn't put you above anyone else if you have a co-applicant. And if you do have a co-applicant, you are able to invite them to certain events and things that we have. So again, it's up to you. Rob and Diana, neither of you had a co-applicant, correct?
Well, our year was a bit different. So I had a co-founder as well. But I took the lead, obviously. Like it's strategic that I took the lead with everything that was given and going on.
And I know
was the lead. I had support, from my team and my husband, but I was definitely the lead applicant as the founder. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. And again, there's not one right or wrong answer there. So nothing, if you have a co-applicant, doesn't put you above someone else who doesn't. Leanne asked, if you are a tech organization, can you update your metrics over time if they change significantly during the application period? So I think there's 2 methods to think about this here. Should anyone wait on this call until April 18th to submit? Absolutely not, because on April 18th, you probably will hit some sort of like tech malfunction that just no one needs stress during that time. Again, our application portal is so seamless, it's so thorough, and we've been using our same application platform for the past 3 years. We know that it doesn't malfunction in that way. Although you all are on here, it's only February. So I think there's a balance between starting it and working on it. not taking too much time for it, but also not waiting until the deadline. So of course you can go back and edit your application, or, if you see that significant change, but it's also kind of a time and place. And we know that we have other aspects of the application, if you move on, where we have Zoom interviews and site visits and the accelerator where you pitch, and those all impact your candidacy before we choose the $1 million winner as well. Someone asked, we are a center within a university that has a long-standing with teacher residencies. We are working to develop school leader residencies. Are you eligible as a center within a university? Okay, so I would look to 2 of our awardees. So one is ASU Prep. They are obviously connected to Arizona State University, but they are their own school working with pre-K to 12 students. And so their application didn't focus on the university level, it really focused on that ASU Prep. So that might be one to look at. And in terms of the teacher residency, last year we had a semifinalist and a finalist that both work on like teacher recruitment or leader development, which is not something that we've previously spent a lot of time funding, because it didn't align as much to our priority of working as closely directly with students, like these 3 leaders do. But National Fellowship for Black and Latino Male Educators was a finalist for us last year. And Block, which is Brothers Liberating Our Communities, were 2 that are focusing on enhancing the Black male teacher and leader pipeline. And they were just doing such incredible work that is so needed in the space of education that our other leaders could also learn from, of how does Diana use what they're doing and like partner with them to make sure that her teachers and leadership are diverse in the ways that they should be. And, so those would be a couple organizations that I would look towards, although I will say that teacher recruitment and teacher development is not the crux or the biggest part of our philanthropy and our awardees. It's people like the 3 leaders on this call right now who are leading schools. And again, those schools could be homeschools, micro schools, charter, public, private, right? Any type of school. Oh yeah, I'm gonna answer 1 or 2 more, and then I will share at the end where you can follow up if you didn't get your question answered. Can prospective grantees meet with Yass Prize staff? So just like I answered the question about the alumni, we just want to make sure we keep this process as fair and equitable as possible. And if we have Zoom or calls with all sorts of potential applicants, it just doesn't provide a fair application. So that's why we do office hours on Thursdays. Every Thursday from 1 to 1:30, you can hop on Zoom. You can talk to myself and ask a specific question. And then we have webinars every 2 weeks. And then info@yassprize.org is the best way to get a question answered, but we're not able to have phone calls or individual one-on-one Zoom meetings. And that hopefully will help you all feel at peace that, there's no preference, or, we really look to your application for you to tell your story. Okay, I think with that being said, everyone has to get back to work at this time. Again, Anthony, it was so wonderful to visit Valiant Cross for our team a couple weeks ago. Rob, the fact that you're on our team, but the Discovery Center is still thriving in Missouri. And Diana, I know our team is so looking forward to visiting in April to celebrate your 10th year and the incredible scaling that you've recently witnessed and are undergoing. So these 3 leaders are a true testament to what the Yass Prize stands for. As you can see, they all are doing really different work. Some really local and some, more bigger and national or not global, more national and regional. So please don't feel like you have to look like one of them or try to have an organization that's like one of them to apply. We're really looking for those hidden gems all throughout the United States. I really appreciate your time, Rob, Anthony, Diana. Thank you. If you 3 can stay on real quick, we'll just take a picture just to capture this moment in time. But everyone else, we really appreciate your time, and feel free to follow us up with info@yassprize.org if you have any questions. Thank you all. Okay. So Anthony and Diana and Rob, we're gonna take a quick picture. We find that when we try to take the picture with one of us talking, then people's facials like don't look as great. We want to capture all of your beauty. So, all right,
Thank
Cassie.
you for that.
Yes, of course.
All right.
Cassie, so we're all three gonna smile, and then Cassie's gonna take the screenshot. All right, here we go.
Awesome. Ready, set, go. Oh, wait, just kidding. There's something in the chat. I messed it up. Okay, now I'm ready. Awesome. Think I got it. Yep. Everyone looks
Awesome. Well, thank you three. I know I talk to Rob on a daily basis now of being on our team, but Anthony, it was so good to see you. Diana,
Thank you.
same to you. And I hope you all have a great Friday and a great weekend.
Yes,
Awesome.
thank you
Good
so
to
much.
see everybody.
Everybody take
So
care.
great to see you. Miss you guys.
Bye.
Thanks
Bye.
all. Talk
Bye.
soon.